What's up everybody, Matt Maran here, and this week I've been driving the 2021 Kia Sorento Hybrid. So I already did a full review on a regular Sorento with the bigger turbo motor and the X-Line trim, which was very cool, and that was a very nice vehicle. And so I wanted to try out this hybrid version though. And so if you're also curious about how the interior is in these, I will link that video above. My wife and I did a full interior review on this vehicle, also a very nice interior. I'll point out some of the unique things here with the hybrid in a minute. But as far as the outside of the hybrid, I think it actually looks really nice. And so you'll see up front here, it has this smoother front end like you get on the lower versions of the Sorento. The X-Line, of course, does get unique styling to give it a more aggressive and off-roady look. But this, lines up with most other Sorentos. But you do have these unique wheels here on the hybrid, which are like these aero wheels, which give you a little bit better fuel economy. And so it totally fits, of course. But I mean, it's still just such a sharp-looking vehicle, these new Sorentos. They're so sharp-looking. I think they knocked it out of the park with the styling. It just looks really aggressive and classy at the same time. You have these little fender things here on the sides, and then out back, I also love how you even have a little bit of trim there. But then, coming out to the back here, you can see these taillights, which I think look really nice, and a little bit of a sportier rear bumper there. But it does hide the exhaust tips nicely because, this is a hybrid, so they're trying to minimize the whole gas component. You will see the hybrid badge here on the back too. That is one giveaway. You're looking at a hybrid aside from the wheels, but everything else, looks pretty much similar to any other Sorento. So also looks great in this red color too, I have to say. It's one of the more fun colors you can get here on these. But let's move on to the inside here. This one you can see has the leather interior you get with the EX trim. This is also the beige leather. You can also get a black leather if you'd like. And yeah, I mean, it's still a very nice interior. Now, since these, you can only get these with a base S and an EX trim. The EX trim isn't as fully loaded as you get on the higher versions of the Sorento that don't get the hybrid powertrain. So that means that, for example, you just get the basic analog gauges and the smaller screen here. We'll go ahead and turn it on. But, I mean, the thing is, there's really nothing wrong with any of this stuff, I mean, it still works great. Actually, one huge advantage you have here is that you have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto on this 8-inch screen. When you go up to the larger screen in the Sorentos, it actually gives you a larger screen. It's like a 10.1-inch screen, but that screen actually gives only wired CarPlay and Android Auto. So, kind of get an infotainment upgrade in a way, as long as you're okay with the smaller screen, which also is lower resolution. You might be able to tell there. It's not as high res as the 10-inch screen, but it still works fine, and I didn't have any issues really with the CarPlay. There was like one time it disconnected on me, but other than that, it's been fine. So yeah, I really don't think that's much of a downgrade. I mean, yes, you have these big bezels and stuff, but I think actually the way it's been blended in with this whole climate control area, I think it actually fits really well. And so I don't think that's a bad integration. And the gauges here, I mean, yeah, they're not digital, but I mean, who really cares? It still does all the basics, and it's not a huge deal there. So I don't think either of those things should be a deal breaker, even though it isn't quite as high tech as you get in other versions of the Sorento. You also get a few less features here, like you get only heated seats. You don't get cooled seats like you get in the higher trims. No heated steering wheel. But one interesting thing here is that all versions of the Sorento Hybrid are front wheel drive only, and I'll talk about that more as we go out for a drive here. But, so, yeah, if you're living in a place where you're okay with a front-wheel drive crossover, chances are you probably don't need a heated steering wheel, and you really probably don't even need heated seats, because, you're probably living in a sunny place that doesn't get much weather. But, just an interesting thing to note there. The other interesting thing is that you only get those captain's chairs in the back there on the hybrids. You cannot get a bench, so you can only seat 6 in the hybrids for some reason. So if you want a 7-seater and you still want a hybrid, your only option is still going to be the Toyota Highlander currently. I'm not sure why they lock out the bench option for the hybrids here, but they do. I believe it might have something to do with the battery though, because I believe there was a review that said you get a little bit less legroom in the back, but I mean, it seemed like a totally normal amount of legroom compared to the regular Sorento. So if it is a difference, it's very, very tiny of a difference. But yeah, so just one other little thing to mention there that's unique here to the hybrid. But yeah, let's go ahead and hit the road and see how it drives. Alright, so starting off here in the Sorento Hybrid. So, first thing you'll notice, right now we have the gas engine on, but oftentimes you'll start off without the gas engine on, especially if you're on a level or a downhill area. It'll just turn on, say it's ready, 30, and then you just start rolling in electric mode. And so very similar to like any other hybrid if you're used to that. There is no dedicated EV mode or anything like that. It only has like a 1.5 kilowatt hour battery, so it doesn't even have like a full mile of electric range or anything. But you know, it's just nice that whenever you are doing that rolling and that coasting and stuff, you can do it with the engine completely off. Certainly helps if you're sitting in lots of stop and go traffic, very low speed stuff. And the motors are actually fairly powerful. I was able to do some very mild and slow passing on the highway, even with just the electric motors. And so it is functional. And you know, if you are taking it really easily, you can probably get up to, you know, 30, 35 or something. Again, if the conditions are right as far as the road angle and stuff, to allow you to actually accelerate a decent bit on just the electric power alone. Other things though, I mean, the Sorento's a really nice vehicle to drive. Nice thin A-pillars, very easy to, you know, see out of the Sorento here. It also doesn't feel too big. It's not quite as massive feeling as a lot of the other larger mid-sized 3-row crossovers in this segment. And so, I mean, all those things make this just a very pleasant driving experience. And so that's all good. But, you know, it is nice how whenever you are coasting, like right now we're in EV mode, you know, you don't hear the engine, of course, because it's off. And it makes it a little more quiet and refined, and all you're hearing is wind noise. So that's always a nice little touch. Now, one interesting thing, and I'll talk about this more as we accelerate a little bit later, but there is sometimes a little bit of a lag or a delay. So this runs a traditional automatic transmission, which is different than most other hybrids, which usually use some type of CVT or direct drive kind of system, which kind of blends in the power a little bit more. With this, you're still feeling shifts, and so that means that sometimes you still will be waiting for a downshift occasionally. There's a few times where the engine will lug a little bit, and you know, it's not super common. It usually does you know, end up being pretty smart, but every once in a while, you know, I do still catch it out of the right gear. Another thing while we're just kind of coasting down a hill here is the brakes. So the brakes are another thing where most of the time they work pretty well, but every once in a while they're not totally consistent. There was a few times where I was like, okay, usually the brakes are gripping by now, and they're not, and I had to push it a little bit further. It's not a huge difference, you know, so it's just a slight little adjustment you have to make to be like, oh wait, this isn't actually you know, doing what I'm expecting it to do. But I do wish the brakes were just a little bit more consistent. I think the most annoying thing though with that engine lag is that there's actually been 3 different occasions now where I've come to a quicker stop. So like if I'm stopping, trying to wait to turn off of a road or something, where I come up to a stop, I'm only stopped for, you know, a few milliseconds, and I'm immediately back on the gas, and the vehicle's unprepared for that. And so I hit the gas and I have to wait like 2 beats. It's like 1, 2, and then it starts going. And in that meantime, I'm panicking like, why is it not moving? So I put more gas on, and then it just wants to roast the front tires, and I look like an idiot doing a huge front wheel drive burnout in an SUV. And it's very confusing for everyone around you. So it's kind of a little bit tricky to be smooth with sometimes whenever you catch it off guard like that. Thankfully, that, you know, has been a fairly rare thing. I've been driving this vehicle almost 90 miles now. So it's happened to me 3 times though, only within 90 miles. So it just depends on your circumstances and maybe how you drive as well. But just one little thing to note there, that I was like, why? And then just would do a huge burnout. This thing loves doing burnouts with the, you know, torque from the electric motor that's immediate, and the fact that it's front wheel drive. But anyway, let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. There is no actual sport mode or anything, so you just stomp on it and see how it does. So you get an immediate little zip from the electric motor, and then it accelerates pretty briskly, to be totally honest. It's fairly punchy, and I mean, it slung itself right up to, you know, pretty quick speeds there without much trouble. So the Sorento here runs a 1.6 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder combined with those electric motors, and all combined it does 227 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque, and that it's actually, it feels like it's faster than the quoted 0 to 60 time. It was really hard to even find a 0 to 60 time, because I guess not many people were 0 to 60 testing this, but CNET claims that it's around like a mid 8-second 0 to 60 time. It feels much quicker than that. This, I would say, feels closer like a 7-second 0 to 60 in my opinion. And with this amount of power, that seems appropriate. I mean, these only weigh about 4,000 pounds or so it's not like it's some, you know, hugely obese vehicle that needs tons of power to accelerate. So it feels really zippy to me. I've had no complaints with the power here, aside from, again, just waiting for it a little bit too long every once in a while. But other than that, I mean, it's really great. The way they set it up tuning-wise is really pretty brilliant too, because the electric motor starts making its peak power from, 0 right up all the way until about 1600 RPMs is when that kind of runs out of steam with that electric motor, and then it switches over to the gas engine, and the gas engine makes its peak power, at least as far as torque goes, around 1500 RPM or so. So as that electric motor's fading, the gas motor is kicking in, coming on strong, and so it really gives you this uninterrupted power where you just get that little zip immediately, and then it just continues to carry you with that turbo power from the gas engine. So it actually, like I said, always feels really punchy, and I have no complaints whatsoever with the power here in the Sorento. If you are looking for more power, though, out of a Sorento, like I said, the regular gas version with the 2.5 liter turbo motor, you get in the top trims. That does, like about 300 horsepower, much punchier. There's also, if you still want more power, but you want good fuel economy, there's going to be the plug-in hybrid version of the Sorento coming as well. That'll give you actual real electric range, probably around 30 miles or so of electric range. Plus, you get extra power because you get extra electric motors to, again, give you enough power to actually drive around on that electric range and stuff. Plus, you get the same gas engine you get in this, so it gives you much more punch there as well. So that's something worth considering too if you do want to go even further with the hybrid thing, although those are of course going to be more expensive, but so is the top Sorento with the normal gas engine. But anyway, coming up some corners here, see how the Sorento handles. So it handles itself okay. I think what I've been noticing in my week of driving it so far is that it has a lot of sway very early on. As you get into it, you push it a little bit more, it kind of holds its line pretty well. But I was just kind of surprised that this handles, to me, much worse than the X-Line Sorento, which felt a lot tighter, a lot flatter, and that actually has extra ground clearance. It's the whole, off-roady thing with that one, and that still was a lot flatter to me than this is. I think part of it is the fact that also had larger wheels. This has smaller wheels with these, good fuel economy tires, and then also a very tall sidewall because of the smaller wheels and stuff. So that's going to give you sloppier handling a little bit in general. But just the tuning of the suspension here for the hybrid, I guess maybe they figure it's a less sporty buyer possibly, so they're okay softening it up a little bit, but it just feels a little more wallowy than I would like here. But again, I've only tested the Sorento with that top motor. The base motors of the Sorento, might also be soft like this is. But just was a little bit surprised. I figured it would feel the same in corners, and it actually doesn't. So definitely want to take one of these for a test drive. But I mean, again, we're talking about a 3-row crossover. I don't think anyone's going to really care too much about how it handles. But just so you know, as far as going around corners and stuff, it still handles itself, perfectly fine for a 3-row crossover. But it's not going to be as good as the other versions of the Sorento. I think also with the higher versions of the Sorento having that all-wheel drive system, which did have some type of a torque vectoring-like sensation, that certainly helped in corners too, whereas this being front-wheel drive, it's all on its own with just, using those front wheels, and that's it, and not really having too much assistance there. Which, by the way, I have to just comment as far as the lack of all-wheel drive here in this. It really is unfortunate you cannot get all-wheel drive in this, because, even vehicles that use the same exact setup like the Hyundai Tucson, it's the same engine, it's the same parent company with Hyundai and Kia, actually manages to have all-wheel drive with this same setup. Why it's not offered here in the Sorento, I don't know, but I mean, it really means, especially with how much this thing loves to spin these front tires, I would not recommend this for someone that even sees a lot of rain, let alone someone who sees snowy conditions. This is just going to be like a non-starter. I mean, yeah, you can put snow tires on it and stuff, but I think you're better off, again, waiting for the plug-in hybrid Sorento, which will give you all-wheel drive. That's going to be the way to go if you want good fuel economy in a Sorento and actually want all-weather capability. But if you live in a sunny place, very rarely sees any kind of bad weather, this can make a lot of sense. It's just strange that, any crossover really doesn't offer all-wheel drive, because that's just something you expect out of most SUVs these days, or any days. I mean, even from the invention of the SUV, the whole point was to have four-wheel drive. So kind of strange you don't have it here in this, but like I said, it could work if you're someone who doesn't mind doing burnouts and doesn't see too many slippery conditions. One other thing I didn't love about the Sorento is the lane keeping assist system. So this is something that I often talk about in Hyundai and Kia reviews, and unfortunately this vehicle is another one where the lane keeping assist system just didn't work great. It's the highway drive assist system, and in this, I hit the button, I made sure everything was turned on, and it still sometimes struggled to, one, even recognize the lanes, because you'll see a little green steering wheel icon whenever it's actually picking up the road lines and helping you with the steering assist. There were some times where, it just wasn't reliable. It just would not, even though the road lines were painted well and they were clear and stuff, it was a bright sunny day, it still could not track those road lines reliably. But then even once it was saying that it was tracking the road lines, it still struggled to keep me within my lane on several occasions. I did do a good bit of highway driving in this vehicle. I'd say actually out of my 92 miles, about 50 or so miles were on the highway. I kept using the system, and it just, every time I was like, I cannot relax with the system. I always have to babysit it, because it just, again, I can't count on it to pick up the lanes all the time, and I can't count on it to actually steer for me. So in the end, I was just still steering myself anyway. So I just turned off the system, because I'm like, well, if I'm going to be doing all the steering anyway, there's no point in even having the thing nudging me, because I can steer myself perfectly fine. So, it's just one of these systems. It still needs a little bit of work. I know other reviewers love this system that Hyundai and Kia has, but in every single vehicle I've tested, and at this point I feel like it's been like a dozen vehicles over the past 2 years or so that they've had this system out, it's just not reliable, unfortunately, in my experience. But one thing that was very impressive, though, in my experience, is the fuel economy. That's what the hybrid version of the Sorento is built for here, and it didn't disappoint. I'm pretty impressed for a 3-row crossover. Over my now 93 miles of driving, I've been averaging 37.7 mpg. Again, I did do about 50 miles on the highway there, but in a hybrid it's actually worse if you're doing lots of highway miles, because it gets better fuel economy in the city where it can rely on those electric motors more. So these are rated at 39 mpg in the city, 37 combined, and then 35 on the highway. So I was doing basically that combined figure, and so I was expecting to get about 37, and here I am getting almost 38. So it's actually overperforming. And even though I did a little drive to the airport, which is almost entirely highway driving, and even still I actually managed to get 40 mpg on that drive. So even when you are on the highway, you could do better than that 35 mpg, and so I was really impressed with that as well. That's a huge improvement. Considering a regular Sorento struggles to get out of the mid-20s as far as its fuel economy. This, you're easily 10 mpg over what you're getting with regular Sorento, and so that's a really nice perk. And again, that would just get even better if you had the plug-in hybrid version here of the Sorento, because then you can rely on those electric motors for most of your around town stuff, at least up to 30 miles. The only thing this really competes with is the Toyota Highlander Hybrid, and those also do pretty similar fuel economy. To be getting almost 40 mpg in something that's enormous, that has 3 rows of seating, is high off the ground and all that kind of stuff, I'm really impressed with the kind of fuel economy you can manage in these things. And as far as the pricing goes, that's the last thing to mention. These are about $1,700 more expensive than a non-hybrid Sorento of a comparable trim. This one, as tested, by the way, retails for $38,210 for this higher EX version. And so $1,700 does buy a lot of gas, and whenever you compare this to a base motor Sorento, you are going to be saving about $1,700 in gas going for the hybrid over about 5 years. So if you keep this more than 5 years, that's your break-even point where beyond that you will start to save money. Now maybe you can get some kind of incentives that are extra on the hybrid here to level the playing field between this and the gas one, but even if you don't, I still think, it's nice to be able to stretch a tank further. That's another thing. Kia claims you can get like 655 miles of range on a tank of gas combined with, using the electric motors. I'm not sure how they qualify that, because the trip computer here was only telling me, even whenever I had a full tank of gas, that the best I could get was about 550 miles of range on a tank. But still, 550 miles on a tank of gas is way more than you get out of basically anything else that's a 3-row crossover, that's for sure. And a lot of even other SUVs, even with massive gas tanks, they're all going to struggle to do that. So even if you don't care about saving money on gas, or you're planning to keep this less than 5 years, it's just nice to not have to fill up as often. And again, depending on what your lifestyle is like and your commuting and your driving, you know, if you do a lot of stop and go stuff, I mean, you know, this could make so much sense. So I mean, I think that it's really a great option. Again, if you're okay with the front wheel drive thing, I think that this is, you know, fantastic. Although, like I said, if you're wanting something that does seat 7, this hybrid, you're still going to have to go for the Highlander Hybrid, and that of course also does offer all-wheel drive. So if you don't want to go up to the full plug-in hybrid thing, the Highlander is still going to be the way to go for a lot of people. But if you're okay with the little compromises you make here in the Sorento, I think it's great. It's also really great that, you know, Kia gives you the 10-year 100,000 mile powertrain warranty, which is something that Toyota does not do. Theirs is about half that long. So you know, you have the extra warranty coverage here in the Kia, which is a nice little perk of these all the time. And so, yeah, I think overall, you know, it's a really nice vehicle, and makes a lot of sense if you're someone who wants good fuel economy but still wants a lot of space. But yes, that's about all of my thoughts here on the Sorento Hybrid. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Huge thanks to Kia for providing me here with this Sorento to review for you guys today. And yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.